Welcome to Talks at Google. I'm Tabitha Breer. I'm a marketer here at Google in New York City. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest to you, Andy Cohen. He's co-chair of Gensler, which is the biggest architecture firm in the US. It would be fair to describe Andy as loyal. He's been there for 43 years, and he was co-CEO with Diane Hoskins at Gensler for 19 years. In January, they became the co-chairs, and they've just published this beautiful book designed for a radically changing world that maps out how we can reclaim a shared human experience through the places that we live and work. Andy, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to Talks at Google. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you, Tabitha, for having me. Really appreciate it. Look forward to doing this with you.
Fantastic. Well, the first thing we wanted to talk about is I'm sitting here at Google's newest office. It's called St. John's Terminal in New York. And I found out this week that your company had a lot of involvement. Could you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, we're so thrilled that you're sitting in that space, and it's a world-class workplace of the future. And by that, I mean, it really is a post-COVID design that really embodies what people are looking for in the space. And I know you're enjoying it, with lots of collaboration space, lots of choices for people where people can work and in the workplace. One motto that we came up with right after COVID was, because we wanted to attract people back to the office, was make the office a destination, not an obligation, a place people want to be, not because they have to be. And that's something that I think your office is all about. It's a place where people really want to be. They want to collaborate. You know, collaboration during COVID fell off 37%. So your office is a perfect example of why it works to be back in the office. People are learning and growing together.
Yeah, I wish that people could see it, because my background really doesn't do justice to this stunning building that I'm in, with, you know, these incredible views, but also, as you say, there are so many places that we can meet and connect and collaborate. My personal favorite, I call it the Coachella room. And it's on the 12th floor, and it's next to the cafeteria, and it's this stunning oranges and pinks and purples and ombres, and you really do have to see it to believe it. So thank you for creating such an amazing space for us. And as you say,
I'm so thrilled you're doing the interview from there.
Yeah, and it really does make it a pleasure and a privilege to be in the office together. So yeah, thank you again. Now, as we get started, I'm just going to ask you 4 rapid fire, very fun questions. You don't need to overthink. Cats or dogs?
Cats or dogs? I have an incredible dog named Tuxie. Absolutely, dog all day long. He's my best friend, besides my wife, Portia.
Love it. Okay, coffee or tea?
Neither.
Oh.
I don't drink either. I stopped drinking coffee or tea a long time ago. I've decaffeinated cappuccino once in a while, but I've given up the caffeine.
Okay, very healthy. Impressed. Beach or forest?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd probably say beach, because I live near the beach now. I love the ocean and ocean sports and stuff, so beach.
Okay, I think I might know how you're going to answer the next question then. LA or New York?
Well, I'm originally a New Yorker.
Ha.
And I live in LA, so I'm a bi-coastal dude. That's a really tough one. I would say my roots are in New York and my family's in LA, so I'm not going to commit.
Okay, I think that's completely fair. All right, so the first thing that struck me reading this book, I have to show it again because it's beautiful. It was the fact that you and Diane were co-CEOs for so long. I feel like that's really unusual. And I wondered how that works in practice. 2 people, 19 years, thousands of miles apart. I think Diane was maybe in DC, you were on the West Coast. There was distance. How do you make that work? How do you make decisions?
Yeah, we think this collaboration philosophy is so important, this collaboration policy. In fact, throughout our firm, not just Diane and me, but throughout our firm, most of our offices and practice areas are co-led. And we believe that this collaboration is really, really important. One of our philosophies we really believe in is that everyone has aces and spaces, things they're great at and not so great at. And what we believe is by pairing people with different aces, that's where the sparks fly. So Diane and I, we've been partners for close to 20 years leading Gensler. we have different aces in different spaces, but you put us in a room together and it's magic. You get unbelievable innovation. We really believe in that. We really believe it's like 1+1=5 in collaboration. And it works really well because we're constantly in contact with one another. Again, we've been working together for so long. We have incredible trust with one another, trust and respect, where we'll constantly defer to one another. We don't get it. People ask us all the time, do you get in arguments or heavy discussions? Most of the time we're saying, why don't you take that one because you have more expertise in that than I do. And it's a really very efficient model, and it allows us to leverage around the world. Look, we have 55 offices, 6,500 people, and last year we worked in over 100 countries. So we're not managing by understanding everything that's going on in the firm. We're leading through unbelievable, talented leaders around the world. And that collaboration model is at the core of that. And then finally, I'll just say that we have what we call a one firm policy. And that is this philosophy, which is that we're one seamless organization around the world. Most architectural firms are led by one or two people, and usually everything goes to them. And we believe in this whole flat platform around the world, that it's all about collaboration and all about innovation. And that's the way innovation happens, by having this collaborative leadership model.
It's probably why you're so great at building these collaborative spaces in offices as well.
Thank you.
I love that top down. I think that probably shines through in the business. People see your mutual respect and see the fact that you've got your aces in spaces and you're working together so that you've got the yin and the yang.
Absolutely. It's very permeable throughout the organization. Again, I would say in most cases, a man and a woman usually leading a practice area or an office. And that diversity of leadership really matters. Diversity of point of view, diversity of how people think, diversity of cultures really matters as we're designing projects around the world.
Yeah, I had a question about that actually. When I think of an architect, shame on me, but I do usually think of a man. I feel it's a very male dominated world. And I looked into the stats, and I work at Google. We have a lot of software engineers. And interestingly, architects and software engineers, they're the same ratio. It's like 76% men, 24% women. It's like exactly the same. And I wondered how you think about that, how you're building this diverse business. And I know Diane couldn't join us today, sadly. It would have been great to speak with her as well. But clearly the fact that you're both leading the businesses is part of it. What's your approach?
Yeah, I mean, just statistically, our firm, 54% of our firm is women. 50% of our board of directors is women. Diversity, diversity fuels creativity. We're in the creative field, designers. And we're different than most other architecture firms that has this incredible diversity within our firm. And we really believe it fuels innovation. That, as I said, when people are coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, different countries, different languages, we believe that's where innovation happens. That's where the sparks fly, where the edges come together and people are innovating together. If everything were homogenized, it wouldn't work. So we really believe, we work on projects around the world. So we'll have designers from Shanghai working with designers from LA, New York, and London. And all those different perspectives coming to the table for our clients is what creates the magic in our firm.
And when you talk about the cities of the future, I think about climate change. You talk a lot in the book about climate change. And clearly as architects, it's something that you're thinking about a lot, whether it's repurposing. But the materials that you're using, the concrete, the glass, the steel, it's difficult. How are you thinking about carbon? What changes are you making?
Look, climate change is the moral and business imperative of our lifetimes. And especially as designers and urban planners, it is the most important thing that our firm is working on today. What most people don't know is that 40% of all carbon creation is buildings. Most people think it's either automobiles or industry, but buildings are the largest contributor of CO2. And that's why, as the most impactful firm in the world, and we believe hopefully the most influential, we think it's our responsibility to take on this challenge. And so what we've done is created the Gensler Climate Challenge. And so we have said that all our buildings, all the buildings and interiors that we design, all the spaces, will be carbon neutral by 2030. And that's a big task to take on. And so we're creating, Diana and I just spoke, for example, at COP28 in Dubai, where we talked about how materials and embodied carbon are so important to the built environment. And embodied carbon is the materials that buildings are made out of and how they're shipped to the site, and how they work within the buildings themselves. Embodied carbon, for example, the largest producers of embodied carbon, each one giving off 10% of all CO2 in the built environment, are concrete and steel. So we're working with steel manufacturers, we're working with concrete manufacturers to develop new types of materials that aren't giving off all this carbon. And then we also created what we call the Gensler product standards. And that is all the specifications that are created within the space that you're sitting in right now. In fact, we use this on Google Space in New York, is the idea that we're specifying all green products. We're researching the best and newest products that don't give off CO2, that are more efficient in their spaces. So, and I'll give you an example of a project we just finished that is net zero, and that is the NVIDIA's new headquarters in California. And NVIDIA's headquarters, most of the spaces are naturally lit through skylights that we used AI to design the ceilings on, bringing in natural light. And that's a perfect example of that. Or another example of a project that we recently completed and continue to work on is the San Francisco Airport. And the San Francisco Airport is going to be the first net zero carbon, zero waste airport in the world. And that's where the world's going, where these projects, where clients are stepping up, where architects are stepping up, and designing buildings of the future that are net zero, meaning they don't take energy off the grid, they design it in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I actually went through the San Francisco airport fairly recently, and I was like, whoa, what changed in here? What happened? This is beautiful. I was in the milk terminal, which I understand you worked on. So
That's right.
So the whole thing is being regenerated and being made carbon neutral. That's incredible.
What's wonderful about it too is we're celebrating the terminals. So when you arrive at SFO, at Harvey Milk Terminal, there are messages everywhere telling you how much energy is being saved. And those are messages that everyone starts to relate to, that they're in every part of the terminal, you're saving energy. And that's really important. And also becomes this incredible gateway to the city of San Francisco.
Yeah, it truly is unbelievable. I hope people watching get a chance to go and see it, because it's absolutely breathtaking. And it gets back to your point about the importance of the spaces that we live in, and the different impact that can have on you, the positive effects. I love the Milk Terminal, and I was really interested learning about the Lower Hill neighborhood project that you did in Pittsburgh. And that was all about trying to address historical injustices. I wondered, do you play favorites? Have you got some favorites in your back catalogue of work?
As I said, we work on like 8,000 projects a year, so it's hard to pick a favorite.
That's why the book's so big.
What I would say is that we really focus on, and we love, is the breadth and scale of our work. We design anywhere from a wine label or a reception desk or a chair, all the way up to the second tallest building in the world, which is the Shanghai Tower. And that's one of the most sustainable buildings in the world. It's a vertical city. There's literally 25,000 people a day that are in this building, and it's live, work, play. There's residential, there's hotels, there's office space in it. But this idea of breadth of scale is really important, because if you're going to make a difference in the world, if you're going to be the most influential firm in the world, you got to work in different scales, and that's what we work. And we work on small office spaces all the way up to huge mixed-use projects, and that scale is really, really important if you're going to make a difference in the world.
Maybe that's what's kept you loyal for 46 years, all that variation.
No, the variation has really helped. And obviously, as I mentioned, our culture, which is entrepreneurial culture, is what spurs us on every day.
Yeah, that's what I actually love about working at Google. It feels like I've had several jobs in the time that I've been here. It's always changing, because we're doing so much. That variation helps. It means you don't get bored. You don't feel like you start to go stir crazy and need to move on.
What's really wonderful for us is that, like you said, I've been here over 40 years. And there are so many people again that have been here 20, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And then over the last few years, we have probably 30% of our people that are brand new. So it's this great mixing box of new ideas and new people with people who have been around like me for decades at a time. And that's what makes this rich experience. We call it the constellation of stars. We don't have one star, we're a constellation.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. Do you have any advice on, like, I'm 40 and I'm thinking retirement feels a long way away and I'm tired. How have you kept your stamina, your creativity, your motivation going? Obviously the variation of work helps, but do you have any tips? It's not coffee, we know that.
I was lucky. I found my passion early in my life. I knew I wanted to be a designer early in my life, and my father encouraged me. We believe it or not, we had a cheese store on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and my family, and it was my grandfather's store and then my father's store, and they thought that I was going to run the cheese store. But my father knew that I loved design and I loved sketching and drawing and building things. And from that, my father said, you know what? And unfortunately, he got ill. And he said to me, you need to follow your passion. Because if you follow your passion, you'll always love what you do in life. And that's been, my father sits on my shoulder every day. And I really believe, unfortunately, my father passed away. And that's when I moved to New York, from New York to California, and joined the startup firm Gensler. And I've had the opportunity given to me by Gensler to follow my passion every day. I mean, every day I wake up and it's a new day and I'm so energized by the opportunity to make a difference in the world, to create a better world through the power of design, to work with unbelievably talented people and to make a difference in the world. So for me, I always knew I wanted to be a designer and I'm following what I love to do every day. I don't really have a bad day. My wife says to me, you never are down. I really don't get down because I'm looking at the next opportunity, the next thing, the next place, the next client, the next city that we can work with to make a difference in the world.
That must be a nice, happy household with you never down. And it's a very Gen Z message of you, I think. It's all about finding purpose and feeling like what you're
It
doing is
it
giving back to
really
the
is, and
world.
I talk to young people here all the time about it. In our firm, they ask me the same question. I said, it is about purpose. It is about that greater purpose in life. That's why we are taking on the greatest challenges, like climate change, like the future of cities, because that's what purpose is all about, really, really using design to make a better world.
Talking of purpose, a lot of the work that you do is in healthcare. You talk in the book about how healthcare is really ripe for revival, and the healthcare buildings have not always been the most caring and regenerative spaces. What are you seeing there? What are you doing in healthcare that we'd be excited to hear about?
We're focused on healthcare and the patient. We're looking at it differently than other healthcare firms. We're focused on the patient experience. The patient, we call it the experience multiplier for the patient, not just the technical requirements of health, but how people can feel better in the spaces and the hospitals and the spaces that we're in. And along with that, we're seeing this, incredible shift right now into distributed health, which is, it's not just about hospitals, but it's about distributed places where health is being given closer in your communities. And with telehealth and all these trends towards doc in the box kind of trends, we're designing healthcare of the future that's more distributed and less centralized. And then put on top of that, we're taking a real holistic approach to health, that it's not just about medical, but it's about every place that we're in. If you think about it, the workplace that you're in at Google right now, there's health and wellness built into that space. We designed in extra air changes to allow more healthy air to be in the spaces. We're using biophilia with plants that are in your space to bring, natural light and green spaces into your life that we know psychologically uplifts people. So health and wellness is in everything we design, whether it's an airport like we're talking about, whether it's a retail store. That's where health and wellness is. So we're focused on the patient in healthcare, but it's also in everything that we're designing. Think about all the hotels we're designing right now, or retail spaces that incorporate health and wellness into their very strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. So many of your projects are really dramatic. You know, the Shanghai Tower, I've seen, as I was looking through the book, and I really hope that people watching can see it, because there's so many beautiful images in here of all of your projects. And I was like, oh wow, Italy and London. I've seen that. You know, I was going through it. It's like a Where's Waldo of beautiful, beautiful buildings. How do you when we think about that drama and that impact that you're looking to produce, how do we take that into our roles, whatever they might be? Like, a lot of us here are creating things. How do we bring that concept of impact?
It's about impact on the human experience, right? And this idea that we use is that it's around the critical design thinking that creates design impact. The way we think about it, you have to question the status quo. We ask people all the time, what would make your space better? What would make you feel better in your space? We're defining problems in different and new ways, right? Taking the existing problems and defining them in new ways. And finally, imagining, really having the imagination to really change the paradigm of what's around you. So we're constantly questioning the design of everything. You know, in this room, we're questioning the design of the door, the design of the lighting, the design of the very space itself. So design thinking is all around design impact, which is so important. That's why we're, like I said before, that's why we're so focused that design, and that's what the book's about, design can make a difference in the world. That design is the catalyst for positive change. And the optimism, the design thinking can really solve issues like climate change or the future of cities or the future of mobility.
When you think about when you're future looking and you're producing something, how long are you thinking? Are you thinking 100 years out? What's the goal?
We're always focused on designing for flexibility because
Right.
we know change is happening, and the world we're living in right now, change is happening faster and faster. I'll give you an example of something we're working on right now. We're seeing that office buildings, a lot of especially suburban office buildings, are not filled with tenants. And so we developed an algorithm that clients can come to us with that analyzes office buildings quickly. Cities are hiring us, clients are hiring us to look at whole portfolios of office buildings that can be converted to residential quickly. And so I use that as an example because the flexibility, think about the people who designed those office buildings 100 years ago that thought they were going to be office buildings forever. You have to think about the adaptive reuse, the transformation of buildings into the future. And that's why we created this algorithm that can quickly tell clients how to change over buildings into something that's more useful today. Well, so we think way into the future, but I will tell you, in designing lots of technical spaces, we design sports stadiums, we design airports, as I said before, and the technologies are constantly changing. So you have to just think about it as a flexible, adaptable design that you know is going to change into the future.
That, especially when you think about all of those carbon emissions in the concrete, in the steel, it must be sad for you to see a building torn down when you could reimagine it into a different space.
Exactly.
And,
Totally
and,
right.
and you were writing the book during COVID. You thought about this book just before
Yeah.
COVID, right? And then you were writing it while everything was changing, and you were predicting the future of transport, the future of work, what this was going to mean for us. Has anything surprised you?
The one thing that coming out of COVID was the amount of work that we're doing because people want visceral experiences. So our lifestyle teams are so busy. Retail, hospitality and hotels, sports, everyone wants to be entertained. Everything around lifestyle has been incredibly, incredibly busy, and people want those. They've yearned for experiences, right? I would say the other thing that really changed was, and we talked about it before, is workplace, office design. That coming out of COVID, people didn't want to go back to the office unless it had purpose, and that's what we've done. That the idea of being a destination, not an obligation, a place where people want to go. And so we're designing the workplace of the future that is much like we talked about your offices, which is about choice, giving people choice where they work, how they work. When they worked in their homes, they're working in the living rooms, you're working on your kitchen. Well, we're giving people choices in the workplace now so they can work more efficiently. I'd say the other area that's really surprising how fast it's catching on is AI. and AI and how we design buildings. I think I mentioned NVIDIA's headquarters before, and we used AI to actually design the spaces, design the lighting that came in the space. So our process and practice is changing radically through AI also. So I think that the conversion of technology, the conversion of what's happened since COVID around experience, these are all new things that are really been ultimately surprising to us.
Yeah, it's quite the time, quite the time to be alive. Just one more question, and then we will wrap up. Um, Thinking about, are there any big projects that you've seen recently that you're really excited about that you didn't work on, or is there a particular country perhaps that's doing cool things in architecture that's caught your eye?
You know, one thing that comes to mind is a city that we have focused on, which is Copenhagen. And the reason why I say Copenhagen, it's a total walkable city. It's not about cars and congestion. It's about people, designing cities for people. And that's what we've been focused on with mobility, because you were asking me what's coming in the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to have driverless cars, and we really believe that'll be a revolution, an evolution and a revolution for the future of cities, because we won't need all the parking spaces anymore that clog our city streets. We won't need all these cars flowing through our cities. We'll be able to put the car in the right place and take our city sidewalks and parks back for people, making it humanistic again. And Copenhagen is a perfect example of that strategy, where it's about the city is about people, about vibrancy, about connectivity, about inclusion, but they're not about cars and CO2 filled cars. That's what it's not about. So I think of Copenhagen in that way. And then I would also say, if you ask me what the next frontier that we're working on, again, we worked in over 100 countries last year. The country that we're working on a lot more lately is Africa. And the opportunity there is just amazing, because sustainability is so important there. Climate change is impacting Africa more than any other continent in the world. And we can take the practices around sustainability and really incorporate there and that will make a huge difference in the world.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a real pleasure. And yeah, when you mentioned Copenhagen, I also thought of balance. It's one of those cities where it feels like people have got the balance right. I remember being there and seeing people on their lunch break, sitting on a boat on the river, eating lunch together on a boat. Meanwhile, I was like working crazy hours in London, and I was like, oh, these people in Copenhagen have got it right.
That's where it's at. Think about it. They're enjoying life, and their city is about people. It's just and urbanity and connectivity. It's just amazing.
Well, thank you again so much. It's been a real honor. It was great reading the book. I would recommend everyone take a look at it. It's beautiful. And yeah, we hope to work with you again on another exciting Google building soon.
We're ready for it. Thank you so much, Tabitha. Thank you so
Thanks
much
so
for
much,
everything you've done.
Andy.
Really appreciate it.
Great to talk. Thank you.
Take care.